don't know what happened. Okay.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Okay. All right. Maybe I can start if you guys are. Just quickly, since we do not have a finance committee chair, I've asked Judge Moore, as being the chair of the board, to take that role for this morning. So, whenever you're ready. Oh, yeah.
See, I remember I wouldn't need my glasses. Oh, and Commissioner Love.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. We will call the meeting to order at this time, and we do have a couple action items. If I could get any motions as it relates to the action items at this time?
So we have no consent agenda today, so it's just we proceed to 2A to appoint a new chair.
Yes. And it looks like you're going to do that, Colleen.
I would be happy to, or Robbie can. So because Mr. McCarrick is now your CEO and not on the board or finance committee, you guys need to determine who should be your chair to run the meetings for the rest of this fiscal year.
Move, appoint Mr. Hendrick, if he accepts.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Judge, you're ex officio, so we, well, we appreciate that.
Second motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
He's delayed.
All right, Mr. Hendrick is the new chair through September 30th.
Okay, and next we're going to go to the FY26 proposed budget millage rate that has been revived, and Mr. Stivers will take care of that.
Thank you, Judge Moore. Good morning, everybody. The action item before you is a proposal and recommendation to the board. So the board will hear that, as you all will be a part of that discussion in July. Bree, if you'll advance to, I want to get through this pretty quick. Get into the PowerPoint presentation, please. Perfect. Right there we start. There is narrative in your materials in front of you, as well as an expanded spreadsheet that blows up the numbers a little bit. So, peruse that as you need to. This is a summary of it. And I'll be driving this from here. So, in March of this year, we were working off the state inflation numbers of 5.6%. At the end of May, first part of June, we got the adjusted number from the county, and it's 3.76. And we'll get the final certified numbers between now and July the 1st. There's usually a little bit of a deviation to that, up or down, so more to come as we get that. The numbers I feel like that we're reviewing today will be stable for us to look at, and certainly not the big jump that we had from March to June. So be aware of that as we go through this. All these slides have had a little bit of revisions because we've had the decreased deflation rate off the 5.6 that we started with. And this was a popular slide that we have, and it shows what the estimated on average single-family home of Pinellas County would pay in property taxes. That's down just a little bit. It's $8 instead of the $17, and down from $218 to the $209. So it certainly has moved some since then. Questions on that?
Just as a point, these are still all preliminary because we don't know what the numbers will finally be until we get them from.
That's correct. Yep, absolutely. So this is the ad valorem and fund balance that we keep an eye on, a little bit of adjustment there. The thing we look at, this is the 10.7 there. That is the unassigned fund balance. We will use that because we budget for lapse. And as you can see, the trajectory as we've gone down over the years, this year we're expecting to go down about $7.7 million. And next year it'll drop even further. And as you can see, in each year, now we're forecasting out as you get beyond 2026, it'll go down even further, or that's what the forecast is. So we're headed in the right direction. As you all have heard, that was a board initiative. We're making some good progress there. Right now, we're a little bit ahead of schedule on our labs, so it's a little bit less than what we thought it would be going forward. So that number may shrink further as we move on into the year. This is the adjustment for inflation, and as you all have heard me talk about, it takes a long time to get to stabilize when you have a downfall in the economy and stuff, and really we rebounded some 15 plus years later there. So I always think that's a good chart to keep an eye on as we look going forward. This is the fund balance consideration that we've talked about. Lapse right now has decreased a little bit from like 9.43, now it's down to the 9.41. And these are the adjustments that we're making as we digest this new inflation rate that we have of the 3.76 for the property assessed values. The current scenarios that we've been looking at is keeping the current millage rate at the 8.250 versus a reduced scenario of 8.13. And this, again, is based on the 3.76. That might change a little bit as we get the final certified values. What's the big difference in the millage rate considerations? The 8.250, as you all have heard me say, the reason that we've been able to make that work, and even though it's unrelated, if we've had $3.8 million in either program non-renewals or program reductions. So that certainly has played a big part of that. We've also had to scale back a little bit on our total FTEs or unfunded positions, but they're down almost 2 positions. And we'll hope to maintain that as we go through 26. In addition, we're spending less, or forecasting to spend less on the new strategic plan. It's almost half, about $4 million. Now it's down to about $1.9 million. So without those considerations of expense reductions to keep the millage rate at the 8.250, if I hadn't had those, I'd probably be coming to you and we'd be looking at a different scenario, perhaps even a request to go up on the millage rate in order to make our budget work. If we were to go to the reduced scenario, the 0.813, you're looking at a reduction at a minimum in not being able to fund the capital RFA. There's been a couple of questions that I've gotten since our board meeting about what that is. Those are one-time monies. It helps our agencies make improvements to their facilities. We try to keep that separate, or we keep that separate for the purpose of when an HVAC goes down, we don't want them to dig into programmatic dollars that affect our participants, the children we serve, and use those for capital improvement. So is it important to our agencies? Absolutely. Are there other sources that the agencies historically have gone to in the past for some relief on that? There usually are. As the economy continues to tighten, those opportunities may be less and less. Questions about that?
Robbie, I was just going to ask, we don't fund depreciation, right,
Correct.
for our programs. So that's not a source of like sinking fund or anything for capital. From us, this is the only place they get money for capital replacements or anything else. Okay.
That's correct. So in both scenarios, we have the cost of living adjustments factored into that. What I want to point out is the majority of the spend for a lot of our agencies is in people, personnel to execute and run the programs. And it's the COLAs are commonly spent for those increases, not only to stabilize salaries, but keep salaries competitive and also keep seats filled. And that's what really generates a lot of our lapse, is just their inability to fill vacant positions. So if we don't keep up with the market, then that can have a ripple effect to that, obviously. They also have the flexibility, if there's areas in their program, if they want to use the cost of living adjustments, that they can apply it in other areas of their program too, to help them better serve or to make up shortfalls in their budget. So be aware of that. Program continuation, the second one down, this is $1.5 million for expansion and enhancement requests to continue our existing programs. New and expanded programs is the next bullet down, $488,000 to complete the current year. We're in an interim phase with the strategic plan, so it's a little bit different when we get into the new strategic plan. This is an expanded, I think, year on top of the 5 years that we currently have. Reason for that, as you all recall, is the hurricanes and the disruption that we have with that. Certainly, it is dependent upon board approval, the new strategic plan, and the implementation of that. It appears that from our last meeting that we are going to accelerate that per Mr. McCurrick's direction. We estimate to have about $100,000 in spend in FY27, and then in out years for 27 through 30, the strategic plan, the average spend, as I've talked about, is about 1.9 versus the 4 million that customarily we've been able to spend.
Yeah, just a little add to that, we've already begun the conversations with our consultants. And we see that we're going to be able to move this quickly, and that we will most likely, if everything works out well, by October be coming to the board with some information on it.
So this is really small text. In front of you, you have an expanded blowout of the budget. And I've got some good narrative that you all have heard, those that could participate in our board meeting, our last one. But this is the reduced scenario, and as you can see, this is where the capital RFA has to be zeroed out in order to make all of our other ratios and targets within our budget work. This has been revised just a little bit. The key driver here is we've got about $2.9 million worth of revenue at the 3.76 as it stands now. We're also continuing to spend down the fund balance. As you can see, it's $8.7 million. We're projected to be $8.7 million less. And that's if we can maintain the current spend rate. If it accelerates, that number will certainly increase. If you go to the reduced scenario, instead of having the 2.9, it takes us down to about 1.3. And then the total spend down is 7.3 versus the 5.7 in the current millage rate. And that's the spend down for the fund balance. So, it's a cause and effect. As your revenue increases, then you have less spend down in fund balance. The less revenue you have, the more you have to rely on your fund balance in order to move forward. Questions about that?
Madam Chair or Mr. Chair, I'm not sure which.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not meant to be an unfair question, but just something that popped into my mind. Do we have any idea if the preliminary certified appraised values are in excess of 3.76, say they're 4.4, which is what I'm kind of hearing they might be, what does that do for your calculations, if you know?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what that figure is. It has been a little bit more, and I'm talking basis points more. It won't be a thing that will necessarily move the needle. We'll have more information as that becomes available to us.
Right, okay. Because obviously, if we're making a preliminary recommendation, and the information I have is that that number is probably going to be a little bit, like instead of like the low to mid 4%. But that doesn't seem like a huge differential to me. But I was just curious if you kind of had an idea of what would be the delta to make it a reduction in the millage rate, but keep the RFA funding and keep the COLAs and all of the things that we want to keep, which are things that I want to keep. But I know it's like I said, it's kind of an unfair question.
Sure. If I can just answer.
Yes, sir.
I did have this conversation yesterday with Mike Twitty and talked about the potential options. Currently, it has gone up a little. If we're looking at it, it's 4.0 at this. If we look at it from that, 4.0 is not a whole lot difference between 4.0 and 3.77. Unfortunately, we can't use those numbers yet because it's It's still so preliminary. But I think what we'll have is for the board meeting, when we do get a solid number that we can work with, we'll look at some of the adjustments. I personally don't think that there's going to be, it'll be that major of an adjustment, at least based on the conversation I had, that would really make it such an impact that we would, have to reconsider where we are or what your vote on today.
But the plan, I'm assuming, Robbie, would be, when we know the final number, you would run it through all the same scenarios.
Absolutely,
So that you and the board can see
Right.
exactly what it really is.
Exactly.
And we'll have plenty of time to do that, in that we should get that certified number by July 1st. I think it's the deadline. And then we've got, 2.5 weeks or so before the next board meeting in order to put that together, and we'll have a better feel for that.
Mike, in your conversation with Mike Twitty, was there any conversation about their collection rate? I know we're targeting on 96. Did he say anything about that?
He still was very unsure about what the collection rate was. He feel comfortable, but it's in that range, 96, but he can't pinpoint it at this point. He was having, to be quite honest, he was managing a number of different things that are going on personally, as well as he was trying to run the numbers, because he was one of the people that was impacted by the storms. So I think he's pretty much well aware of what's happening in those spaces. But it was, he felt that it was pretty consistent that it would be in that range.
We'll see.
Fund balance, so as you all have heard, we maintained 3 months, that's by board policy. The current millage at the 8250, we're able to do that with the reduced millage. Obviously, taking out the capital RFA would allow us to do that as well. The recommendations and feedback, the suggestion is to maintain the current millage rate. With all the other reductions that we've made to that budget in order, or that millage rate in that budget, to maintain those ratios, it works well. It wouldn't if we didn't have those renewals or non-renewals and the program reductions that we've done. It is a decrease of about 3.5% from what it was in 25, and that's the proposal. So everything, I just trying to paint the picture, is showing that we are decreasing our budget. We have decreased revenues, what they've historically been. We've got $3 million to work with, I think, in addition to cover inflationary costs, those type things. But a lot of good work has gone into this budget in order to get it to this point, certainly for your consideration to recommend to the board.
All right, thank you, Robbie. I did hear a request from the board to make sure that when we do get the final number that we run all those, and Beth said and Mike said we would do that. Commissioner Latvala, I know you're online. Are you hearing any updated numbers from the commission side of things in terms of the value?
No, in our meetings, I guess 2 weeks, I guess it was last week or the week and the week before, we were told to expect 3.77% and plan for that. But we did not complete our budget information sessions. The largest part of our budget we have not been briefed on yet, and we're going to be having more meetings in July and August on the budget. And so it's still a work in progress, but we have, we're preparing for it to not be a pretty scene.
All right. Any other discussion? Mr.
Yeah,
Johnson?
and just, I think we all know, we're just recommending a not to exceed number, and then that not to exceed number is gonna be set by the full board in the July meeting, so by that time, we'll have the actual percentage. So, just to be clear, I was just kinda asking to see where we were at, if anybody kinda knew where we were at as of right now. But I'm super comfortable with the 0.825.
Okay. Any further board discussion?
Just quickly, I wanted to note that in our July 24th meeting, that's exactly what Trustee Onks just mentioned is what we would carry forward to the trim hearings, whatever the outcome of that meeting is. The trim hearings is very important to us. The meeting is On September the 8th, it's a 5:30 meeting. That's the first trim hearing meeting. And then 2 weeks later, on September the 22nd, is a board meeting followed by the final trim hearing. And the board meeting starts at 3:30 with the trim hearing commencing at 5:30. So please be aware of that. It's important that we have really good participation there in order to move forward. If we can't do that, I think it's relevant for this committee to know, then we get into having to renotice. That's $200,000+ in order to do that, and a big setback to our budget process. So can't stress enough the importance of that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome. Look forward to working with you.
Thrilled to be the chair, thank you. All right, so we need a recommendation on a proposed millage rate to take to the board from the Finance Committee.
I move and recommend keep the millage rate where it's at 0.825.
Second.
We have a recommendation by Mr. Milliken, a second by Mr. Bartlett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, let's go to discussion, the monthly financial and investment report for May 2025. Mr. Stivers?
Okay, thank you, sir. Bree, this is item 3A. Perfect, you got it up there. So this is a snapshot as of May 31st. That's about 8 months into the year, or roughly 2/3. So be aware of that as we go through. And Bree, if you will advance 2 more slides, 3 of 7, right there. You'll roll that down, perfect. The big change in our asset scenario is really due to our cash position, and it's roughly $5 million or so, $7 million, $6 million actually. And this is the spend down fund balance, and there's where it hits the financial statements to show that we are taking cash away from JWB in an effort to control and keep our fund balance at reasonable levels. So that's where that manifests itself there. And then Bree, if you'll drop down to the liabilities there. And in the liability section here, under the total liabilities, we have a change of about $1 million, and that has everything to do with the pension liability. That's a very complex calculation that I don't fully understand, but as we run the math with that and work with our auditors, we're able to produce that. So certainly I want to recognize Richard and others here. Richard, raise your hand. Hunter, Stacy's here as well. To recognize the hard work that they do to help us put that together. And then just another thing I want to point out that I think is very relevant. This is the unassigned. This is a figure that is largely made up of lapse, and unassigned means that there's no restrictions to it, and it can be used at board purview. We use that lapse in order to balance our budget. If we didn't, then the lapse will continue to grow year after year after year. So that's a strategy. If you look at the spreadsheet in front of you, our revenues that we project to bring in are less than the expenses that we will spend, and that's because we're using lapse in order to balance it. Next, yeah, you're driving. If you'll go down just to the next page, and this is 4-7. There should be a page just up from there. You go. This is the year-to-date budget, 8 months into the year, and everything's tracking exactly like it should be. This is the property taxes, the ad valorem revenue. We're about 96%. The collection rate that was mentioned, it'll probably stay about there. So we've collected most all the monies that we're supposed to collect. As you can see, the line below it, we're a little bit ahead on interest revenue, interest income. For this time of year, so we're about 105%. We'll continue to, we right-sized the budget of that last year in order to get to this year. Obviously, rates have stayed up a little bit. I think that's tied largely to some of the inflation that we're experiencing. But from an interest income standpoint, that's a really good thing. So we'll take that and be happy about it. With our administrative cost, this is JWB's budget. We should be about 66% in spend. We're about 62%. So we're tracking, or 64%, we're tracking exactly where we need to be. With our program budget down here, they're at about 46% versus the 66%. Now, That will have a variety of different reasons. One, if which some expenses are rear-end loaded, they incur those more towards the end of the year. Some expenses are front-end loaded. Some just go with the increments in the month. You know, as the month goes, they're spending it down in a 1/12 kind of pattern and cadence. But it could be all over the place. We're hopeful that will right-size itself as we get further into the year. If it doesn't, that means our lapse increasing on us. And that's one of the tools that we use in order to monitor lapse.
Robbie, one of the things, when I look at this every month, if we're 5 months into the year, I use 4 months to look at programs, because they'll spend money in October, but it's not paid until November. So program expenses end up always kind of a month behind on a cumulative basis until the end of the year, and then October, Katie bar the door, you know, I mean, they all start coming in. Is that right, Stacy?
At least a month, because then you also have, in this scenario, there are a bunch of default reimbursements that were approved by program finance that went through the AP cycle that weren't actually paid until the next month, until June, because they're not due until May 31st. So you've actually almost got, depending on how many.
Almost two sometimes.
Yeah, so I actually have been kind of working with Richard a little bit on the monthly financials, and I've been, for the last 2 months, making peace with that percent, because they don't like it. I think in my mind.
Yeah, it looks like they're not spending their budget, but the reality is it's just, they're always gonna be 1 month behind until the very end of the year. And so it's a more helpful way to know, you know, are we in trouble or not? Are they not spending or not?
The big thing is too, you've got a summer bridge budget in there, almost $3 million, and none of that's been spent.
Yeah, and so to Robbie's point, it's not just that they back end load, it's that there's more activity in the summer for kids that we pay for.
Bree, if you'll go down just a little bit further on this slide. So that was program expenses, that was their administration expenses, and here's non-administrative expenses, which is largely made up of IT expenditures, software subscriptions, and other things that we do with technology for JWB. And then at the total bottom here is your total expenditures. We're about 50% for this time of the year. Again, with all the considerations that Ms. Houghton talked about and the other commentary, that will catch up, we believe, over time. That's one of the tools that I mentioned that we will keep an eye on to make sure that we're not having our lapse increase over us throughout the year in an alarming rate. Bree, if you'll go to the next page, please. Here's just some good graphical information. I think it's very beneficial, and this is year-to-date revenue compared to last year. That's what this is. And then there's a comparison for the fiscal years, the year-to-date spend right here. So this is the total budget, the comparison for the fiscal year, 25 to 24, and this is the spend, and we're right on target where we should be. Bree, if you'll advance down a little bit further.
I have a question if I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
The chart you just showed us a minute ago is different than the one in our book. The numbers changed after the top row.
Yeah, this.
You go back a slide. The numbers that are reflected in some of these calculations appear to be different, like the one that's in this book.
Does the book have May or April?
Year ended April.
That's why.
Yeah, this is the May. We've got that available. You'll have it before you leave.
Maybe I was losing my mind.
Yeah. No. All right, and then the bottom graph here is each division or department that we have in JWB and where they are year-to-date with spending their budget. So tracking along, again, we'll have some expenses that have been front-end loaded versus expenses that have been rear-end loaded, so be aware of that. Nothing alarming there. The next page, Bree. This is the contracts that were signed between $25,000 and $75,000. There were none for May. And then these are the budget transfers that were approved this month for the St. Pete Free Clinic, and there's the description of that. as well as the personal enrichment through mental health, DBA Elios. They've changed their name, and there's a description there. It's about $73,000. Next, go down a little bit further, and I'm almost finished. So this is cash on hand. This is what we have in our concentration account. That's our operating account, fancy word for that. These are through the Florida Department of Treasury, and these are the investments that we can go into. Here are the average rates of return. This is what we have as far as balances right now that we'll be using between now and the end of the year to spend down. Here are the earnings that each of those investments have. We'll also keep some of this, obviously, in our investment pool as is required by board policy for our reserves that you've heard me talk about. Overall, we're about 106% above budget with interest revenue right now. We expect that that trend will probably continue, which is a good thing. So we'll see that as it goes throughout the year. And then investment by institution, if you really want it broken down, there's a good comparison to that. This is what we keep in our operating account relative to what we have invested. So we always want to keep as much money as we can invested, but also be prudent with the balance that we have available for us in our checking account. And then lastly, this is the year-to-date investment yield comparison for 24 to 25. Any questions on that?
Any discussion from the board? Robbie, I would just say that I know as a CFO, it gives you heartburn to see things go down in terms of balance, fund balance, but we have asked, the board has asked to spend those dollars, and we appreciate the staff doing that and putting the money out with our kids.
Thank you.
All right, no more discussion. We'll go to item B under discussion, which is the fiscal year 26 Finance Committee and Auditor Selection Committee meetings. Robbie?
Thank you. This is just displayed here, what's in your book. And Cherry Beckert has served as our external auditor for JWB since 2006. In 2021, JWB put out a request for a proposal that Cherry Beckert prevailed in. Again, it was awarded to them. We've exhausted all of our renewals. This last renewal will take us through about this time next year. So between now and then, we're required to go out and open up another public solicitation in order to get some competition. And this committee will be a part of that evaluation committee that will evaluate proposals. The Audit Selection Committee is the same as the Finance Committee. So what that means is, if you'll go down to the second page there, we did a proposed timeline, which is there. And between October and December, we'll convene and develop a timeline and stuff, and get evaluational factors and contract periods and the details. We'll release the RFP probably sometime around March. At the end of March, we'll have a pre-proposal conference where we can have interviews with those that have submitted proposals and vet those proposals and have a discussion about that. We'll have an Audit Selection Committee presentation of those top proposals. Be about 30 minutes each for consideration. And then there'll be a final meeting for us to award those proposals. So what does all that mean? That means a couple of extra meetings for the Finance Committee between the fall and roughly spring or first part of summer next year, in order for us to get to the point to be compliant with the statute and be able to award the contract for our new auditor for the next 5 years. So we won't have to do that for another 5-year period. Finally, the new appointments that have just been made, I guess the precursor to that would have been that we'll have a couple of extra meetings. So this is an anomaly of a year. We will make that as streamlined as possible. Certainly, Mr. McCurrick or myself will be an advisor, or certainly the facilitator of this process to get good prompt information that you all can vet and consider. Any questions about that?
Yeah.
Can we reuse the RFP that we used before, just changing it, basically update the dates and some of the numbers in it? But instead of having to
Basically, yes.
put a lot of process together, put an RFP back together, it's really, we're doing the same exact thing we did before.
That's correct. A few revisions, but
Right.
yeah, it'll be basically the same.
Okay.
Absolutely. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rob. All right, Beth or Mike, Chief Executive Officer's report?
I'll try to keep this as short as possible. We all know that the state has proposed a $1.5 billion reduction. At the same time, we also realize that the governor still has his veto power that hasn't been used yet, so we're waiting for those final approvals. Congress and federal government are currently working on their budget, and it's expected to be presented to the president sometime before the August recession. August, it's kind of that feeling, isn't it? The recess. So we're kind of still in the dark as to what we know or what we don't know about where we are going to be from a budgeting perspective. We have to get to the September 22nd timeframe for us to finalize things, but one of the things that have happened recently is we're hearing from our funded providers or funded service groups their concerns. And so to kind of help through that and maybe be a little bit more understanding as we look towards our strategy, I asked that we send out a message to all, and I give them an opportunity to come and talk to us about what their feeling is and where they're at. Made it very clear in that letter, and we followed up with a few others that we had to make it even more clear that there is no more funding coming out of JWB. So if they lose funds, I'm sorry, we can't help you with that today. But what we really do want to know is what you feel the impacts are, what we might be able to use in the future as we plan for a strategy going forward. Session starts today, the first one. We'll have 3 and broken up, and then we will record those sessions so we have the information available to be able to utilize as we move into our planning process. I hope what this does is it allows them to feel more comfortable that we're here and that we're not taking any funds away from them today. So the first question one of the questions they did have is they were concerned, JWB is going to take funds from us? Answer is no. Your programs that have been funded are still funded. And what we're really trying to do is just better understand what impacts you may be having in the future. So again, those start today. And for some just other updates, last week we met with Congresswoman Anna Paluna. She came in. She has a 2.5-year-old son, so it was good to kind of sit down with her and talk about turbo babies and get some of her input. She had some very interesting comments. Her team had some very interesting comments about things as she was giving birth and what impacts or what things happened. Our team is working on those, especially in the area of breastfeeding as an example. She had some issues, and so we're working on that to make sure that's more streamlined and the information's out properly. She's also identified, Chris Lafala, Commissioner, joined us at that meeting. She identified that she's very willing to help and support us as we go forward both from a local and a federal perspective. And we'll be talking to her more about what that might mean going forward. She did offer, and we'll see if it comes to fruition, but she did offer to work to get both the First Lady and Second Lady to come and see the work that's being done here, because she believes it's uniquely different than anywhere else, and that they would be very, very proud to see what JWB has done over the years and what it will do as we move towards our 80th year. We talked specifically about infant safety, early childhood development, mental health. She's very, very interested and very concerned about children's mental health. And again, there's another area that she said she would work closely with us, both federally and statewide, to continue the type of programs that we're working through. Upcoming dates to remember: 2026 JWB Summit will be held on March 26th, 2026, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the St. Pete College and Seminole campus. And we ask board members to save their time on their calendar and to let Olivia know so we can ensure that we follow the calendar invitations. So that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. McCurrick. Open agenda, do we have any speakers? All right. Any further board discussion? We are adjourned.
You are currently the only person in this conference. Please wait while others join.